The Cincinnati Scenic Railway. The CSR is a group that operates both the Lebanon, Mason, and Monroe Railroad in Lebanon, Ohio, and the wildly successful Ohio Rail Experience across western Ohio. Currently, the CSR has started a campaign on charity.gofundme called Save the Chessie. The goal for the campaign is to raise $35,000 to save from her Chessie System / Baltimore, Ohio 6955 from getting scrapped. 6955 is one of the few ex-CSX GP30s to not get rebuilt as a slug or another type of locomotive. Currently, it's owned by National Railway Equipment and is in storage at their facility in Silvis, Illinois. The current plan is to raise $35,000 to purchase the engine from National Railway Equipment. Once purchased, the Cincinnati Scenic Railway will then need to raise some more money to prepare 6955 to be moved back to Ohio and to be restored back into its Chessie system colors. Once restored, they plan on operating it on both the Lebanon, Mason, and Monroe Railroad and the Ohio Rail Experience in excursion service. But they only have a limited time to raise the $35,000 to get the engine. They only have until October 31st, 2020 to get the money to secure the engine from National Railway Equipment, and if this goal is not met, there is a good chance that 6955 will be scrapped by NRE. So, if you wish to help save this piece of history from being scrapped and would also like to see some Chessie system power and excursion service, go to charity.gofundme and go to Save the Chessie to donate your money. They also have a website and a Facebook page where you can also learn more about 6955 and what is going on at the moment. The link to the GoFundMe and the website and the Facebook page will be down in the description box down below, so you can go check it out. Just to let you know, guys, I wasn't paid or anything to make this ad for the campaign. I just want to help spread the word about what's going on and how to help get this engine saved. I mean, we were able to save Kansas City Southern 503 from getting scrapped, so perhaps we can save this engine as well. I also strongly encourage you guys to share both the charity and this commercial to everyone to help spread the word, and hopefully we can save the Chessie. The date is June 20th, 2020. On this day, my dad and I were at North Bank Park in Columbus, Ohio, where we saw a southbound Ohio Central train as it crossed the Scioto River on CSX's Columbus subdivision. As you just saw, this Ohio Central train has some interesting power on the point. Starting with the lead locomotive, Ohio Central 3322 is an EMD SD40-2, possibly built in 1979 for the Union Pacific Railroad as 3537. Ohio Central 4027 is an EMD SD40T-2, built in 1980 for the Southern Pacific Railroad as 8277. It ended up on the Ohio Central in 2004, and a year later it was repainted to the Ohio Central's maroon and gray paint scheme and given its current number. The last engine on this train, Ohio Central 3339, is also an EMD SD40-2, possibly built in 1977 for the Colorado and Southern Railroad. The reason why I say possibly for 3322 and 3339 is because there is little to no information out there on both these engines. From what I was able to uncover for these engines, the information that is out there is contradictory. So, if there's anyone out there that knows for sure the original identities of both these engines, please comment about it down in the comment section down below. After we saw this train cross the Scioto River, we tried to look for some more trains around the Columbus area, but we were unsuccessful, so we went back home. Luckily, our next outing proved to be more of a successful day. 2 days later, on June 22nd, my dad, brother, and I were heading down to Kenova, West Virginia. As we were heading south, we then came across a southbound Norfolk Southern coal train, so we decided to pull over in Chillicothe, Ohio to see it. We drove over to Strouser Park, where we then watched the coal train as it crossed the Scioto River into downtown Chillicothe, Ohio. Once the coal train got past us, we were about to leave when I noticed the signal was giving a medium speed indication, which meant that there was another train not too far behind the coal train. Medium speed is when a train can only pass a signal going 30 miles per hour, which is red over green. So we decided to wait here for the other train to come by, and after about 20 minutes, it then came around the corner. It was a southbound Norfolk Southern grain train with a special locomotive at the head. NS-4002 is a rebuilt GE AC-44 C6M. It was originally built in 1995 as a GE C40-9 as NS-8789. In late 2016, 8789 was rebuilt at the Roanoke Locomotive Shops in Roanoke, Virginia, and was the third engine to get rebuilt as an AC-44 C6M. As a result, 4002, as it was renumbered to, was given what Norfolk Southern was calling the main scheme, as the paint scheme was supposed to resemble a horse's mane. But rail fans came up with their own name for this paint scheme, the Sonic Bonnets, as the first two rebuild locomotives, 4000 and 4001, were painted in a blue-gray with yellow stripe scheme, which had a resemblance to Sonic the Hedgehog's hair. The name stuck. Whether or not it was a good or bad thing, I'll leave that up to you. Once the train got past us here, we then decided to give it chase, but we didn't get too far before it was stopped. The train had stopped on the only siding between where we were at before and Omega, Ohio, southeast of Chillicothe. This end of the siding, where the train was stopped at, is called Lumbark by Norfolk Southern. By the looks of it, the crew of the train had ran out of time. The crews of these trains are only allowed to operate them up to 12 hours. Normally, this is enough time for the train crews to run a train across a district or subdivision, but sometimes things might happen along the way, such as delays along the main line or being stopped in sidings. Either way, this crew of this train had ran out of time to operate it. Getting back to 4002, the first 6 engines of the rebuilt AC-44 C6Ms received the Sonic Bonnet scheme. While 4000 and 4001 received the Sonic Bonnet scheme, 4002 through 4005 were painted in what railfans called the Shadow Bonnet scheme, with one minor difference between the 4 locomotives. 4002 and 4003 have the Tuscan red stripe running down the engine's main, while 4004 and 4005 have a blue stripe running down the engine's main. Besides 4000 through 4005, there were 3 other locomotives that were given their own sonic schemes. Norfolk Southern 1800 and 1801 have what railfans call the Tails Bonnet scheme, and NS 8520 has what railfans call the Knuckles Bonnet scheme. Unfortunately, 8520 was part of a failed program by Norfolk Southern to rebuild their fleet of C40-9Ws. As of today, 8520 has been now sold to Knoxville Locomotive Works, which is a rebuilding locomotive company down in Knoxville, Tennessee. Behind 4002 was Norfolk Southern 1091, an EMD SD70 ACE, built in 2013. After admiring 4002 for a minute, we then decided to get back on the road. As we were heading south, we decided to travel along CSX's Northern sub to explore it. When we were nearing Waverly, Ohio, we then came across a southbound CSX ethanol train with 2 Canadian National locomotives at the head. So we gave chase and caught it at the Skaggs Lane / Road 507 railroad crossing just east of Piketon, Ohio. Canadian National 3186 and 3108 are both GE ET44ACs. Although 3186 is wearing the standard orange, white, and black paint scheme, it also has the special Aboriginal Affairs logo. It's a special patch on each side of the nose of the locomotive to represent all the Aboriginal nations and some Métis territories in Canada that the Canadian National works with or either operates close to. CN 3108 also has the standard paint scheme, but instead of having the standard CN logo, it has the 100 CN logo on the side. Back in 2019, Canadian National celebrated its centennial birthday, and as part of the celebration, the railroad decided to put the 100 CN logo on a good chunk of their locomotives. This also goes for the Aboriginal patch locomotives. In some cases, some of the engines will have both the Aboriginal Affairs patch and the 100 CN logo on them. After seeing the train here, we then tried to chase the train down the line, but thanks to a closed road we went down, it wasn't until we crossed the Ohio River where we caught back up with the CN-led train. The next place we saw this train at was at the Ohio River Road Railroad crossing, just north of Lloyd, Kentucky. Although we are still on the northern subdivision, just north of our location, across the Ohio River from Wheelersburg, Ohio, is where the Cincinnati subdivision, running from its namesake city, connects with the northern subdivision. Although the Cincinnati subdivision ends there, trains still travel across the northern sub before reaching the crew change point of Russell, Kentucky. After the CN-led train passed us here, it then came to a stop just north of Greenup, Kentucky. It was waiting to get into Russell Yard, which is where we went to next. We now find ourselves at the former Russell C&O freight station in Russell, Kentucky. Here, the station area now appears to be a small park, with a C&O caboose on display here. The city of Russell now owns the depot, the caboose, and even RU Cabin, a former switching tower. For some reason, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad preferred to call their switching towers cabins, and although this tower is no longer in use by the railroad, this place is still referred to as RU Cabin by the railroad. As we were looking around the area, a CSX freight train began to pull out of Russell Yard, passing our location. Russell Yard was once a major classification hump yard for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad and was once known as the biggest privately owned rail yard in the world. It was basically the rival to Norfolk and Western's Star Yard in Portsmouth, Ohio. But, unlike its contemporary back up north in Portsmouth, Russell Yard is still an important yard for CSX as 4 subdivisions of the railroad meet here. From the north, CSX's Northern sub from Columbus, Ohio, and CSX's Cincinnati sub from Cincinnati, Ohio, meet CSX's Kanawha sub from Montgomery, West Virginia, and CSX's Big Sandy sub from Elkhorn City, Kentucky. As of today, the yard is mainly used as a flat switching yard, with the hump yard now out of service. Although the hump yard section now is used mainly for storing cars for the railroad. Back during the days of the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, the hump yard was used primarily for sorting coal cars coming from trains that came from many of the coal mines along the railroad. But with the advent of unit coal trains, the hump yard lost its purpose here. The yard was also home to CSX's Russell Locomotive Works, which was a locomotive rebuilding and maintenance facility located right in town. Unfortunately, due to a decline in locomotive power on CSX, the railroad closed their Russell shops back in April of 2019, and many jobs there were lost. Although the yard lost its locomotive shops and hump yard, Russell Yard is still an important classification yard for CSX, as many freight trains are still broken up and reassembled here. After exploring the area, we then went down to Kenova, West Virginia, where we then saw a southbound Norfolk Southern freight train on the Kenova district. We then gave chase to the train and got some pacing action along Highway 52/Big Sandy Road. After some time of pacing the train, we then got ahead of it and caught it near the intersection of Highway 52/Big Sandy Road and Dock Creek Road. This train would prove to be a pretty interesting one, as some of the cars on the rear end of the train were former Penn Central grain cars. After catching the NS train, we then drove back to Kenova, West Virginia. Kenova is well known by rail fans for being a busy hotspot for rail traffic from both Norfolk Southern and CSX. The best spot in town is at the southwest corner of 13th Street. Here you can see both the railroads at work. The next train we saw here was an eastbound CSX coal train with 2 GE and 1 EMD locomotive at the point. CSX 293 is a GE AC-44CW built in 1997. CSX 4564 is an EMD SD-70 Mac built in 2000 for CSX, originally as 764. It was later renumbered to 4564 in 2008. CSX 5314 is a GE ES-44DC built in 2006. Although coal in the New River region of West Virginia has significantly declined, coal trains still travel through the New River line to get to some coal mines that are still open in this region of West Virginia. After the coal train passed by us here, we then drove down Pine Street to try and explore some of the CSX line in town. But as a result, we ended up missing a southbound NS train as it was crossing the bridge. But luckily, after that train got by, we then caught an eastbound CSX freight train as it passed by the 12th Street crossing. It was the same train we saw earlier back at Russell Yard. This train we are seeing here is one of CSX's precision scheduled railroading trains. Precision scheduled railroading is a concept developed by E. Hunter Harrison. Harrison was a businessman who was the former chairman of the Illinois Central Railroad, the Canadian National Railroad, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, and lastly, CSX. The concept of PSR, as everyone else has been calling it, is to expedite point-to-point freight car movements on simplified freight routing networks, eliminating older practices such as unit trains, hub and spoke systems, and hump yard switching. Under this system, trains operate on a more flexible schedule instead of being dispatched out whenever enough freight is available to be moved. Although Harrison did implement PSR onto his other railroads he worked for, it wasn't until he was made chairman of CSX when PSR really came into the limelight. He was nominated chairman of CSX on March 7, 2017, and as soon as he was made chairman of the railroad, he implemented PSR. He stayed as chairman of CSX only for a short time because on December 16, 2017, E. Hunter Harrison passed away due to severe complications from a recent illness he had contracted. Although he was on the railroad for only a short time, he definitely left an impact on CSX as his predecessors continued to implement his precision scheduled railroading onto the railroad. Another note of PSR is that the long trains that PSR ends up making are so long that they require DPU power to operate them. Serving as DPU power for this train was CSX 8902. CSX 8902 is an EMD SD70 ACE-T4. The engine is part of an order of 10 brand new locomotives built by EMD. They were first developed back in 2015 to meet Tier 4 emission standards, but it wasn't until mid-2016 that mass production of them began, with the first buyer of them being the Union Pacific Railroad, ordering a whopping 100 of them to be built. Then, in early 2019, CSX took delivery of 10 of the SD70 ACE-T4s, numbering them from 8900 to 8909. When they were first delivered to the railroad, they were put onto trains running in and out of the Bone Valley region of Florida, before rolling out onto the rest of the network later in 2019. After the PSR train got by, we then drove back to our spot at the corner of 13th Street. As we were waiting for our next train, a CSX westbound coal train then snuck up on us, and I nearly missed it. CSX 358, 522, and 42 were all GE AC-44CWs, 358 being built in 1998, 522 being built in 2001, and 42 being built in 1995. CSX 728 is a GE ES-44AC-H, built in 2007. Although PSR is supposed to eliminate unit trains of all kinds, as you can see here, there are still some unit trains on CSX. As of today, PSR has been implemented on nearly every Class 1 railroad in North America, with the notable exception being BNSF, as they are the only Class 1 railroad to not implement PSR. As the coal train continued to roll on by, a Norfolk Southern eastbound freight train then came by on the bridge. Just like the coal train, it was all a GE show. NS 9593 is a GE C44-9W built in the late 1990s. NS 8054 is a GE ES44AC built in 2011, and NS 7510 is a GE ES44DC built in 2004. After both the coal train and the freight train got by us, we then caught Norfolk Southern 3357 as it was crossing the Kenova Bridge southbound with no train in tow. NS 3357 is an EMD SD40-2, built in 1977 originally for Conrail as their 6409. After 3357 got off the bridge, we then caught another westbound CSX coal train, this time from the other side of the tracks. Unfortunately, while I was filming this train, my regular video camera ran out of battery power, and I had no other batteries to replace it with. So, as a result, I decided to use my photography camera to film the rest of the train.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You didn't do it for free because you wouldn't be doing it for.
After the CSX coal train got by, we then got back to the other side of the tracks and caught one more train before calling it a day. It was a southbound Norfolk Southern intermodal train as it was getting off the Kenova Bridge. After this Norfolk Southern intermodal train got by, we ended our day here and went back home. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this trip to Kenova. It was a lot of fun for us, and if you ever want to come here and see trains, the southwest corner of 13th Street is the best place to see it all. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a good day. See you later.